Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So this week we're going to be talking about the Nintendo GameCube, and this is a console that I really enjoyed back in the early 2000s, and since then there are a ton of mods that have been created for it that really improve the whole experience of using a GameCube in 2025. So one in particular is the use of HDMI mods. So this lets you just plug an HDMI cable straight into the GameCube and get a really nice experience with it. So there have been dongles that plug into the back of the console that give you HDMI through the digital port. There's also mods like the Pluto or the GC Dual that also give you HDMI direct out the back. But today what we're going to be doing is talking about the latest HDMI mod for the GameCube, and this is the PixelFX Retro Gem. So I've talked about this before on the channel, but for those of you that don't know, the Retro Gem is kind of like this Swiss Army knife for HDMI mods on retro consoles. So you can plug this thing in to a PS1, a PS2, an N64, a Dreamcast, even a 3DO, and now the GameCube, and you can get up to 1440p of digital video and audio out without any meaningful input latency. So I really like that about these types of mods, because like if I want to take this console somewhere else, like to a friend's house or for a tournament or for some kind of retro gaming event, which I participate in, I don't need anything complicated to set it up. I don't need a scaler or like anything. I can just plug HDMI straight out of it into a modern display and get a really good quality experience out of it. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to install this Retro Gem, and I also have the ability to compare this mod to the older mods that are out there, so we can see how it performs and just kind of make a comparison. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this thing apart, and I already did some of the disassembly because it's kind of time consuming, and honestly it's very simple to do. You start with a game bit screwdriver, and on the bottom there's these 4 long game bit screws that you need to remove, and then once those are out, the top just comes right off and reveals the rest of the board. So there's tons of screws on this thing. Like Nintendo kind of went crazy with all the screws on the GameCube, but it's simple. You just need a Phillips screwdriver, and you have these 4 long screws here in the front, and then the rest of the board has these smaller Phillips screws all around it. So the only thing you really have to remember when you're doing this is really the area by the fan and the power supply. There's kind of an order in which you have to take these out and also put them back. So you've got these 2 screws over here for the fan. You've got one hidden underneath the power jack right here, and then 3 underneath the fan. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those on camera, and then we'll kind of have a look at the motherboard from there. Okay, so normally at this phase of the installation, you have to make a decision about where you want the HDMI port to go. So the kit comes with this little 3D printed mount, and this can go either here where the digital port is, or it can go over here where the analog port is. So in my particular case, this is something I'm making for myself, and I actually don't want to get rid of either port because I do use the GameCube with CRTs. And I have the component cables, so I could even get 480p out of some CRT monitors. So I want to keep that. And so thankfully there is a third option for installing it, which is to use something like this. So this is a 3D printed backplate that is made by Blue Shell 3D. And so as you can see, you've got the 2 ports here, but now there's a third port here on the top where the HDMI can go, and I really like this because I don't have to remove any ports, and I can still keep that full functionality for CRTs if I want to, and then I still have the HDMI out the back. So yeah, I do like it like that, but that's just me personally. If you don't own CRTs, there's honestly no point in doing what I am about to do, but I am a huge nerd and love CRTs. So yeah, so that's how we're going to handle this today. So let's go ahead and flip over the Retro Gem, flip over the motherboard. And so what we're going to end up doing is soldering this this little mounting plate right over here. This is where the RetroGem board is going to go, and it's going to go something, I think something like, yeah, something like this, I think. Yeah, going to go like this ultimately when we're done. So yeah, let's go ahead and just solder this into position. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is install these like screw posts that are going to end up going right over here. And they have kind of like an indentation on the bottom so that they line up exactly where they're supposed to go without really any trouble. All that being said, I think I'm going to probably need to use my desoldering gun to attach these just because it has more thermal mass. So actually, let me go ahead and just switch to that right away. So sometimes like situations like this where there's a lot of copper or something that requires a lot of heat, I prefer using the desoldering gun as my iron just because it can generate a lot of heat very quickly. So you see how really without any trouble, I just soldered that down. If I used a regular iron or even worse, like a fine pointy tip, I just wouldn't have the kind of thermal mass I need in order to get it positioned. But yeah, as you can see, that made things really easy, and those posts are now soldered into place. Okay, so that's all done, and now let's move on to the next step, which is soldering the flex cable. Okay, so now we've got to prep the board for the flex cable. And to do that, we've got to scrape away some solder resist on a few vias, and we also have to remove two capacitors. So you can see there's two caps right over here. So I'm just gonna go like that. Again, if you use a chisel tip like this, it kind of makes quick work of them. Okay. So now from here, we have to scrape solder mask off of 4 vias that are located in this area right here, which is right underneath, I think, the main CPU. So first one is right here under C222, like right under the number 2 here. The second one is just below it. And it's like right next to the arrow mark right there. Once they're scraped, you should also just try to make sure you can fill them up with solder. Okay. So this time some solder stuck to those. All right, now we have another one which is located right over here. So you just use these 4 capacitors as kind of your guideline. You go in the middle of them and one up. And then the last one is right over here, right next to where it says C55. But this one actually looks like, at least on my GameCube here, it looks like the solder resist is already off. Yeah, it is. I didn't have to scrape that one. That's very nice. Okay, cool. The only other thing I've got to do is over here. There's some solder resist. All right, so with all of those vias prepared, we are pretty much ready to go ahead and start soldering in the flex cable. All right, so we're going to start by soldering the main connection to the AVE chip, which is right over here. And as you can kind of see, I already pre-tinned all of these pads, and that just kind of makes the whole process a little bit easier because I don't have to add fresh solder as much to get everything connected up. So what we're going to do is just line this up, and I mean, I have to say, even already, this is not that bad compared to other digital installations. Because like the pads are kind of big and the chip is also kind of big, so I can kind of just do this by eye. So let's go ahead and just add some fresh flux once the pins are all lined up. And I'm going to just tack in a few. Now I can kind of come in with my tweezers here. This just helps to tack in the rest. And then down over here, where we removed those two capacitors, there are now two anchor pads that we can solder this down to as well. Okay, so that's good, and now let's move on to the next step. All right, so now that the main part of the flex is finished, we're gonna go ahead and just solder in these arms, which go to the 4 vias that we tinned earlier on. So there's one that goes like right here. So we're just gonna line up the arm. This is tricky. Yeah, so it's probably very hard to see on camera, but yeah, you want to line up the arm right over the via. Okay, that's one. And here's the final two. Sorry, I'm just trying to decide on the best approach for this. So here's one right here, and I think with this you've got to really do the outer one first, and then do the inner one. All right, and so that's kind of the worst part of the flex cable, I have to say, is this. But now that it's all set, the only thing we have to do is just these 2 points right over here. All right, so last little bit of soldering is right here. Just gonna solder to this ground anchor point. And then we're also gonna ground, or not ground, we're gonna solder this final leg over here. To this multi-out. Okay, so with all of that, the flex cable is ready to go. Okay, so from here, the retro gem is basically ready to go as far as getting it mounted to the board. So the final couple of things you need to do is you have to set the jumpers correctly so that the gem knows to be using the GameCube firmware. So basically you leave F and G and K open, and you close all of the rest of the jumpers to have that all set. I also installed the little Wi-Fi antenna. This is for software updates. This is the flex that's going to take it to the back of the console. And then finally, of course, we have the main flex cable, which needs to be installed. So let's just do that real quick. So that just goes in like that. And so the gem is going to like flip over upside down like this. And I think, yep, that has to also go like this. So yeah, it's going to go ahead and look like this. There's like a pad here that comes with the kit, and that goes underneath the main Tryon FPGA, and that's of course just for dissipating heat onto the RF shield. So let me just go ahead and lock this down. All right, and there we go. That's actually a really nice, clean installation. Okay, so let's go ahead and start rebuilding the console, and we're ultimately going to connect this to the back port. All right, so to get the HDMI out and also the Wi-Fi antenna out, we need to make some minor adjustments to this RF shielding. So with the official method where you replace one of the ports, you send those things out over here. So you have to make some cuts and remove this part of the shell. That's outlined in the official documentation. But in my case, since I'm doing it with this 3D printed backplate, what I'm going to do is send those things out similar to how you would for the GC Dual. So what I'm going to do now is just remove this little piece of RF shielding right here. So, so doing that is pretty easy. You can just kind of cut this right here. All right, that's probably more than I needed, but to be frank, I really don't care because the RF shielding and all of the assembly on this is pretty over the top as it is. And that gives me plenty of space on the bottom here so that the ribbon cable and the wireless can come out without any issues. So let me go ahead and start reassembling this thing, and I'll be back in a minute. All right, so taking the full-size HDMI port just goes right into this opening here on the blue shell print. And there's like a little piece of plastic there that just kind of secures everything in place. So I really like this design here. It's pretty simple. And it just slides right in. There's also a nut and a screw that like secure it down. But right now I'm actually not interested in doing that. I just want to test the console and make sure that everything is working properly. So just got to try to snake all this through, and then we will give it a quick test. All right, so I have the console mostly assembled, but I just kind of wanted to show you how I have the flex cable oriented for this blue shell 3D print. So what I ended up doing was, for now, just taking the Wi-Fi and just kind of tucking it away because I'm still testing. I haven't finalized anything, but it'll most likely just get taped down to this side of where the DVD drive is. And you can see here's the flex cable. And so what I ended up doing was having it loose and not connected to the HDMI connector, and then just sliding it underneath this little peg here where the lid detection switch is. And everything just fits like that. I didn't have to do any kind of modifications to other modifications to the shell or to the retro gem or anything like that. And yeah, everything just kind of slots in just like that. And so now if you look at it from the back, it actually looks really nice. You can see here's the HDMI port, here's the power, the multi-out and the digital. And so all of it's available so that if I do want to use this with a CRT, I can. And because of this 3D print, I didn't have to cut anything. So it really does give it a nice look. So now let me just go ahead and put the top on. So I always lift the lid like this, just so that I don't accidentally damage these switches for the lid detector switch. And yeah, everything just closes up very nicely and it really looks great. So yeah, let's go ahead and plug this thing in and see if it works. All right, so we've got everything plugged back in and I have a game inserted in the console. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see what it does. All right. So yeah, that's a really good sign. Okay, and the game's running, no issues there. So let's go ahead and open up the Retro Gem menu really quick. So for that, you hit the L, R, right D-pad, and X buttons. So just like this. Wait, no? Ah, there we go. I just didn't have it pressed down enough. Okay, so yeah, this is the menu, and this menu is just like how it is for all of the other retro gem flavors in different consoles. So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that everything is working properly. So I'm going to go to System, and I'm going to go to Self-Test, and yeah, it looks like everything is good. We should see all hearts here. That means that, you know, all the connections are correct. Let me just turn down the audio here because I don't really need it. So yeah, let me just go ahead and show you some of the things that this can do, which is unique relative to the older GC video HDMI out options. So one thing that's really nice is if I go here to output resolution, you can see I can go all the way up to 1440p without any kind of issue. One other thing too is that if I go here into presets, they have all sorts of nice scanline options that are pretty in-depth, pretty cool. So I'm going to set one of those up real quick and show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is the digital CRT effect, and so you can see there's like a slot mask and scan lines, and it does really give it the look and feel of a real CRT. This is just one of many options that are available on the RetroGem. So yeah, this is something that I think is really nice that the GC Video really just doesn't have. So if I want that kind of CRT effect, I can do that very easily with this. So yeah, let's just go ahead and switch over because I do have a GC Dual console, and we can kind of compare the same game and just see how things look. Okay, so we're back, and this is my console with a GC Dual installed, and it also has a Blue Shell HDMI port on the back. But yeah, so what you see here is it's booted into 480p mode, and it just feeds that straight into the monitor. And so my monitor is doing all of this stretching. So it's actually incorrect. Like I would really want a 4:3 aspect ratio. And of course, you know, some monitors do allow you to do that. This one is a computer monitor though, so I don't think this one would just let me set it into 4:3 mode. But either way, it would be kind of annoying to do that. I'd have to come in here and hit the menus. I don't even know if it has it, but I kind of don't think that it does. Of course, I could pair this up with one of the newer scalers like the RetroTink 4K or with the PixelFX Morph, and that would fix all that for me and give me a really nice 4K image. But again, like the thing I like about HDMI mods is that if I don't want to plug it into a scaler, I don't have to. I can just put it on any old TV without any complication. So yeah, so these are some of the nice things about the RetroGem that I like over the older solution. That plus the ability to add in really nice scan lines and slot masks to give it a CRT feel if I'm in the mood to do that. But yeah, that about covers it for this week's video. I definitely recommend the RetroGem, and yeah, I think it's a great mod, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they put it on other consoles next. So that's it for this week's video. If you guys like this kind of content, then consider subscribing to the channel. I have videos out when I can do them. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.